it's your old buddy Platt. Today I show you how to reuse/wash yeast. So let's go. So gang, today's video is a little more technical than I normally do, but I figured at this point, as many videos I've done about making wine, cider, mead, beer, what have you, that hopefully I've gotten you kind of hooked into home brewing, and hopefully you started doing some home brewing, which means you want to learn more about home brewing. And today I thought I would introduce a little technique that I think once you grow along the path of home brewing, you'll eventually want to learn, and that is how to reuse, or some other people use the term wash, yeast. And basically it's reusing yeast from a previous batch. Now I did kind of a video on this on my Will It Ferment video, but this is a little more technical technique we're using today, so I thought I'd do a whole video on that. Why would you reuse yeast? Well, one of the things that happens is when we're done with a particular beer or whatever, and you go to transfer or bottle it, there's still yeast left on the bottom, or sludge. There's still active yeast there. There's still something of value there, and we can recapture it to use in a later brew. This is a great way to save a few bucks. If you're only brewing once every 6 months or so, no need for this. But if you've really gotten into the hobby and started brewing a lot, this could save you a buck or two down the line, especially if you brew in bigger batches. These are 1 gallon, but if you brew in 5-gallon batches or 1 barrel batches, you definitely will want to start reusing your yeast. Also, it is something done at the commercial level. Every time Coors, Miller, Anheuser-Busch go brew a batch, they don't run to the store for yeast. Now, obviously, they have yeast labs, what have you, but a lot of commercial brewers will reuse or wash yeast from a previous batch to use again. Also, it's something, after a while, once you start really get into brewing, let's say you're wanting to really nail a recipe. Let's say you want to make your best version of a pale ale, and you found the right yeast. Now you're working on the hop additions, what have you. You can continuously roll that yeast over into future batches to kind of create, a consistency that way. So again, a technique that is definitely valid. So what do we need to reuse/wash our yeast? Well, first we need some old yeast. This is from the smash ale I brewed not too long ago. I just racked it off in the secondary, and this is the sludge left on the bottom. Next, you'll need some bottled water. Normally, in brewing, I've said in the past that, well, if you got a good clean water source, it's fine, or if you boil the water, what have you, it's fine. This, because the yeast is in kind of fragile state right now, we want to be extra gentle, so that's why I go with either bottled distilled water or bottled spring water. And just a little bit will do. Obviously, if I was in a 5-gallon container, it'd be a little different. And then you want a couple of mason jars. I have one sanitizing right now. We'll eventually end up transferring over to these throughout the process. Real quick, what is in here is a Saf Ale USO5, kind of a standard ale yeast. But again, if you're brewing just a lot of standard ales, like a blonde ale, pale ale, cream ale, stuff like that, well, not necessarily cream ale, but a blonde ale, smash ale, stuff like that, might as well roll that yeast over into the next batch. So, with that being said, let's reuse/wash some yeast. Alright, so the first step is pretty simple. We are just going to put about half our bottled water maybe not quite half. In there. And we are going to shake this up. Make sure we get all that yeast off the bottom. Alright, we've got her all shook up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this bottle on its side. And we're going to let this sit for about 30 minutes like this. And what will happen when we come back, I'll shoot a shot on it. But what will happen is all that physical matter will separate on the bottom. And when I talk about physical matter, dead yeast cells, hop particulate, some fine pieces of the grain, you know, crushed grains or whatever, will all settle to the bottom. Then there'll be a separate layer, a semi-clear layer of liquid on top. There's still active yeast in there. That's where the active yeast will be. The dead yeast will be on there. So we're going to separate that out. So we'll come back in 30 minutes to separate her out. All right, gang, it's been about 30 minutes. And as you can see, there's a little thin layer, fairly clear layer on top, a little more milky layer. And then underneath our spoon, I'll have to be real careful not to shake this. You might vaguely see a slightly darker layer where sorry about that, where most of the physical matter has settled. We're going to pour off and capture all that top layer, a little bit of that second layer. If a little bit of particulate matter gets in there, that's all right. But anyway, I just want to let you see kind of a side view of how this looked. So let's pour off our slurry. All right, gang, so now we're going to kind of pour it off. This is similar to almost like decanting when you decant wine. I've done a video on that too. But it's kind of similar. You want to keep as much of the physical stuff on the bottom and take the liquid off the top. We're going to go ever so gently. And maybe you could tell in this side view we're just trying to pour as much of that clear liquid off the top without disturbing. And again, you can see you can see all this physical matter on the bottom. We want to leave that there. And we'll cap that off. Next, we'll cap this off. And we'll go into the fridge and leave this overnight. And tomorrow, we'll see a lot more separation. So let's come back in 24 hours and see what we have. All right, gang, real quick, it's been overnight. I just want you to see how all this yeast is settled on the bottom. Up here is just kind of a slurry. There may be a few active yeast cells, but the yeast has settled to the bottom. Now all we got to do is basically decant one more time, but I just wanted to get this little close-up yeast so you could see all this yeast on the bottom. All right, gang, so one more step. Basically what we're going to do is decant into another container. However, what we're looking for is going to be on the bottom of this container. I probably didn't need this one, but better safe than sorry. So we're just going to carefully pour that over. We don't want too much of that yeast transferring over. Pour nice and slowly. Most of that's kind of caked on the bottom, so that kind of works out. All right, that's good right there. And what we got here, probably a little too big of a jar for it, but what we got here is our yeast for our next gallon batch. That'd be too small for 5 gallon, but for our next gallon batch. Now this is going to be good in our fridge for about 4 weeks. After that, the yeast has deteriorated, enough cells have died off. It's no longer viable to use in the next beer. Now, when it comes to that next beer, what you want to do is, let's say we want to brew a beer tomorrow. Tonight, what I would do is start a yeast starter, what's called a yeast starter. Basically, it's you make a little mini beer, generally with just water, boiled water and malt extract. That will wake the yeast cells up, give them a fresh batch of food, get the activity going, and you'll give it 24 hours, and then this time tomorrow, we would be brewing our next batch of beer, and when we get that down to pitching temperature, that's when we add this yeast, or the yeast starter. One tip on that is the bigger that next beer is, higher the ABV, higher the starting gravity, the more time you kind of want to give it in the yeast starter phase. If you're going to brew something big, big imperial stout, something like that, you want plenty of yeast cells and you want them active, ready to go. A smaller beer like a light blonde ale or something like that, a small yeast starter, even just an hour or two, while you're brewing it, would be probably more than enough. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Or you can call. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for shows, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, bottoms up.